In this video, we're looking at division with complex numbers. It's a bit like division with surds, if you've done that before, where we have to get a complex number off the bottom of a fraction. So the way we do this, if it's just a complex number like I, is we just times by I over I. And let's see what happens here. So if we step out the top, that's going to be 1 times I. And if we look at the bottom, that's going to be I times I, or in other words, that's I squared. By definition, I squared is -1, and well, the top is just I. Since that's just a normal real number on the bottom, we know how to divide by -1. It just makes the whole thing negative. So 1 over I becomes -I. And we can check this. Your calculator will just tell you the answer. So if we look at 1 on the top and we look at I on the bottom, hey, we get -I. That's good news. All right, now it can get a bit messier if we've got sort of a combined complex number with a real and imaginary part on the bottom like this. What we're going to want to do is times by the conjugate. When I say the conjugate, I mean you flip the sign on the imaginary bit. So if it was a plus, you would change it to a minus. And vice versa, if it was a minus, you would change it to a plus. So we're looking at 4 take 2i. And we have to times by the same thing on the top and the bottom, because essentially this is sort of like timesing by 1. Any fraction with the same thing on the top and the bottom is 1. So it doesn't change anything, but it does help us algebraically. And let's see what we get. I might step this out in full. You don't necessarily need to draw this step, but it might help us visualize. 1 plus 3i on the top times by 4 take 2i. And then 4 plus 2i. With 4 take 2i. Okay, we can FOIL out the top. So if we look at that, we're going to get 1 times 4 on the top. So that's going to be 4. Next term that we're going to get is 1 times -2i. Then next term is going to be the 3i's. So that's 3i times 4. And then 3i with -2i. So that's -6i squared. I squared because you've got I times I. All right, next we've got the bottom. Now we can FOIL this out, or you can use a handy difference of 2 squares formula. So just remember A plus B with A minus B. There's a shortcut for FOILing that one out. You just get A squared take B squared. This is the difference of 2 squares formula. And this is the reason we times by the conjugate. Because if we look at applying this to the bottom, we get the first number squared, so that's 4 squared, take. And then we get the second number squared, that's 2i all squared. Just like that. And the reason this is so nice is pretty much because we're going to be left with a normal real number on the bottom. So let's just deal with simplifying the top first. So we've got 4 take 2i plus 12i minus 6i squared becomes plus 6. If you want to think about it, 6i squared is 6 times -1. Because I squared is -1. And so you get -6 as your answer. Since we already had another minus there, it flips to plus 6. Okay. Dealing with the bottom, 4 squared is 16. And this will become, I'll keep the minus sign. We're going to have 2 squared and I squared. I am doing a lot of extra steps here, so if you want to skip a couple, that's fine. All right, let's collect our real and imaginary bits. So for our real bits on the top, we've got 4 and 6. So I should get 10 there. And for our imaginary bits, I've got -2i and plus 12i. So I should get 10i, just like that. All right, now let's look at the bottom. 16 and 2 squared and I squared. So I might just deal with this bit off to the side, 2 squared and I squared. This will become 4i squared. I squared is -1, so the whole thing becomes -4. Since we already had another minus sign, this becomes 16 plus 4 on the bottom. And now we can simplify that down even more. We got 10 plus 10i over 20. We can split this up into 2 fractions. And that becomes a half plus a half I, just like that. Okay, so you might be able to skip a few steps there if you get really confident with the algebra, but that's pretty much the very full working process. We can also check this on a calculator. So we hit the fraction button, 1 plus 3i on the top and 4 plus 2i on the bottom. Hey, it's a half plus a half i. That's very good news for us.